If you love ancient history, then this is the channel for you. History Hit TV. It's like Netflix, but dedicated just to ad-free history documentaries, including a huge library of ancient history content from the 9th Legion to Boudica to the First Britain. Simply check out the details in the description below and make sure you use code Odyssey on sign up.
If you were a Roman soldier guarding the northern frontier of the empire, which would be worse, facing the warring Picts on Hadrian's Wall, or stuck in a tower like this in the marshes of the Netherlands, watching over the River Rhine, the main supply route into Britain? Here in Utrecht, archaeologists are making some amazing discoveries which detail what life really would have been like here on the frontier and how hard the Roman army had to work in order to keep the supply route to Britain open. Time Team have been invited to the Netherlands to help uncover that story. And you'll understand why we're just a tad excited when I tell you that one of the things that we're going to be digging over the next 3 days is a perfectly preserved Roman boat. Utrecht in the Netherlands was once on the northern frontier of the Roman Empire, which at one time extended from Hadrian's Wall in Scotland all the way across to the Black Sea. In the Netherlands, the frontier followed the course of the River Rhine, which was the main supply route used to get goods and soldiers out to Britain, the island on the very edge of the known world. Amazingly, much of that story is preserved here, in the waterlogged soils on the outskirts of Utrecht, even though the River Rhine itself now flows further to the south. In advance of one of the biggest building projects in Europe, archaeologists have been given the chance to investigate before some 30,000 new houses completely cover this area. This picture is based on their fantastic discoveries so far, which include Roman watchtowers, forts, and the frontier road, all built alongside the River Rhine.
I mean, you've had some fantastically preserved stuff here, haven't you?
Yeah, why do you need us? You've done a great job.
Well, after a couple of years of Roman archaeology, we're still left with a few problems we hope to solve.
Have you got time with the building work?
Well,
if it's almost on top of you.
To be honest, it's the last round of Roman archaeology.
Right.
The building is getting close.
Yeah.
Okay, so we haven't got very long. What are the things that you want us to resolve for you?
Well, we've got this Zandveld site. We've got a collection of amateur finds and some trial trenches in the neighborhood, suggesting a military site, but we're not sure really.
You said 2 problems.
Yeah, there's not a problem over here. That's a river bench. We excavated one ship, a Roman ship, a couple of years ago. But now, after that one was excavated, we discovered another one, and it's still there. So we want to know the date of this ship.
So you didn't excavate?
We didn't excavate, it's still there. It's over there, just a couple
here?
of meters down there.
None of us can quite believe it. Buried just 2 meters under here is an intact Roman boat. So where's the pointy bit, the prow?
Well, we've found one end of the ship somewhere over here, and well, we expect it to be running 30 meters in that direction.
30 metres? What, I mean, in other words, it goes right through those trees then?
Well, deep down under, really. I mean, it's going down very steep in that direction.
Erik, I mean, look at this. This is so dry. What makes you think it's still going to be well preserved in the ground?
Well, I hope it still is. I mean, it was there 2 years ago when with the same conditions. I mean, it's waterlogged, really. You have the groundwater table is, well, this deep, I guess,
Right.
at the moment.
We've got to find it first, haven't we?
I think
So let's get
No, it's here, mate. And look, we've got a digger. Let's use it.
Let's get started.
Erik and Herre discovered the boat 2 years ago, but only had time to expose a fraction of it. Essentially, our goal is to find out how old it is. And personally, I can't wait to get my first glimpse of a genuine Roman boat. But we're also going to try to help sort out what was going on at the Zandveld site that was further along the river. Erik and Herre discovered a Roman watchtower in this area, but because of pottery finds in this field, they think there may be a small Roman fort here too. They're hoping Jaap might be able to locate it for them. Roman forts on this frontier were built within half a day's march of each other, and several have been excavated. The dig here at Alphen Fort turned up many well-preserved Roman coins like this one, which tell a story in themselves. It had been assumed that the forts were built by Emperor Claudius on his way to successfully conquer Britain in 43 AD. But surprisingly, the coins have revealed that it was the Emperor Caligula who fortified the supply route to Britain a few years earlier.
There was a massive amount of Caligulan coins, nearly 400 of them, which is very impressive. And in my opinion, the whole fort dates to 40-41 AD.
So what might Caligula have been doing here?
He was the third Roman emperor. He only reigned for 4 years, from 37 to 41. He was extremely keen to emulate the great military achievements of his father, Germanicus, who was a general who fought up here very successfully along the Rhine. The only trouble was that Caligula was slightly demented and a bit of a murderous megalomaniac. So, although he planned to invade Britain and he got all the preparations up and running here, he ended up deciding that he was going to conquer the sea, and he did that by telling his soldiers to go and take seashells away from the sea.
So he just turned around and went back to Rome?
That's basically what he did.
With the seashells?
Yes. Probably. And, of course, the Roman populace was not terribly impressed by this great military victory, and he was assassinated, but he did leave behind him all the preparations for an invasion of Britain.
But this Caligulan coin has more to tell, because it's been counterstamped with the Emperor Claudius's name.
It reads Tiberius Claudius Imperator. He puts his name on Caligula's coins because after his death, as Guy told us, his name was cursed. His coins were no longer valid. And by putting his name on them, Claudius made them valid again, so to say.
So does this imply that these forts weren't just used for Caligula's failed invasion, but for Claudius's successful one as well?
Exactly. Caligula had made all the preparations for an invasion. If you'd come here in around the year 43, you would have seen thousands of troops and all the equipment, the barges and the boats ready for an invasion of Britain, just like the lead up to D-Day in 1944. And of course, those soldiers had to be paid. 3 out of the 4 legions used for invading Britain came from the garrisons along the Rhine. So that's 15,000 men alone.
We actually know that.
We know that for a fact.
But proving the case for a fort at the Zandveld site is not going to be easy.
Our problem, you see, Tony, is that on that side of the ditch over there, there's going to be a lot of dumping of material in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we got a few weeks left, actually.
So we want to look there to see what these Roman finds were that were found earlier.
Yeah.
On this side, both of these fields are scheduled, but we're only allowed 1 trench. So we've geophysicked in this field, and we're going to geophysick in that field, but we don't want to take a decision on where to dig until we've got both lots done.
So do we just have to sit twiddling our thumbs until geophysics has been done?
No, we can start on that trench the other side.
Excellent. So, as the first trench gets underway at the Zandveld site, I'm going to check how Phil's getting on locating our Roman boat. Phil?
Go.
Is this stuff what Erik's guys laid down last time?
Yeah, this is the polythene that's directly on top of the boat.
This plastic sheet was put down to keep the moisture in the soil and help preserve the boat until this excavation could happen.
There she is.
Look at that. Oh, look at that.
Can I come in, Phil?
Yeah, come and have a look at this. I mean, look at that. You can't. Look at that. I mean, listen to that. That's as solid as rock, isn't it? Eh? Super. Yeah.
Wow.
Come on, you're enjoying this,
I
aren't you?
certainly am. I mean, that could have been in the ground for 5 years, couldn't it?
But you know, it's been there for 2,000 years.
Extraordinary.
Incredible, isn't it, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's not just a piece of wood. You know it is actually a boat. I mean, somebody's actually seen it. They know it's a boat. But there's just so much we don't know about it.
At this rate, we'll have it in the water again by Friday. The boat that Erik and Herre have already excavated was found just a short distance away and is of the same type as the one we're digging. It means that we know our boat should look something like this. This is a Zamadam-type river barge, named after the place where they were first discovered. These flat-bottom barges were used by the army and independent traders to move cargoes along the River Rhine. Most, like this one, have been dated to the 2nd century AD. But according to Erik, our boat could be significantly earlier, which would get the archaeologists really excited. The preservation of the wood here in the Netherlands is so exceptional that Mick has sneaked off to see some of the special finds discovered in the waterlogged soils.
What's this in here then?
It looks a bit
This
like
post was once part of a Roman watchtower, a structure that would have looked like this when it was built around 62 AD. Not only is this post the best preserved in the world, but it also has something written on it.
For example, here you have the I.
Right.
Here is the T.
Yeah.
And here is the A. The funny thing is that they made it
Yeah.
and they just erected the post and filled it, so it was not visible.
Yeah. And what about this lot here?
We're talking about watchtowers. You know, we have these ideas of soldiers standing on guard on these watchtowers.
Yeah.
But you know, in front of their watchtower, there was a river.
I was going to say, these look like fish traps to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
These, in fact, are eel traps found in front of one of the watchtowers, and something like 1,950 years old.
the eel entering this little thing here, the tunnel, swimming through here, entering the basket, you know, swimming around, eating the bait.
Yeah.
Here were some little twigs here, but I couldn't get out. And to hold it on, you know, on place in the riverbed, they put a lot of things inside.
I was going to say, it looks like Roman tile in that one. And
this one is
was
even
it
better.
brick and
This-
tile here.
Roof tiles, that one, you know.
Just to weight it down.
Yes, to weight it down. This one has such a fine little twigs. Look at these.
Ah, yeah.
I like this one the most because it's so beautiful made.
And the preservation of the boat looks to be just as good. Phil, that piece of wood must be at least a metre below the bit that you found.
I know. But the main thing is we've now got the bottom of it, and you can see, look, there's the join between two of the planks, and it comes through underneath this main rib.
There's a heck of a lot of it there,
I
isn't
know.
there? Could we have the whole of the boat here, Jaap?
No, one of the ends of the ship is missing. We don't know if it's the fore or the aft, but it's above the groundwater table and completely gone, and it only left a soil mark. But
So
here
all
it's-
this is stuff that that you've exposed before?
Yes,
OK, so when do we get to stuff that's new archaeology?
in an hour.
Wow. Which bit?
The bit just under the feet of Phil.
So you literally dug down one side of the ship. It
and
was a
only
boat,
a part of the
but
side.
you never saw the whole thing
No,
right the way
no,
across.
no.
Phil, what's that lump just below this new piece of wood?
Well, we've got one here, and one there, and another one there.
These are big chunks of volcanic rock, and Jaap reckons they've fallen into the boat from the riverbank. Surprisingly, there's no natural stone in the Netherlands, and it appears that the Romans shipped in basalt rocks from Germany to try and stop the river eroding the road along the frontier. Over at the Zandveld site, the news isn't good. The geophys survey hasn't revealed anything that looks obviously like a Roman fort. Worse still, having decided to investigate this intriguing blob on the plot, our one and only trench allowed in this area has revealed what looks like modern rubbish.
It's copper. It's a can, really, but particular strange form. What's it?
No, that's not ferrous, so
That
I'm not
wouldn't
seeing
explain.
that. No,
That wouldn't explain your signal.
but the bit of wire could.
Of course, there could be more here than just bits of wire. There could be Roman finds deeper down in this trench, and we'll find out tomorrow. But there is some positive news from this site, because Rakshal's trench, put in here outside the scheduled area, has found some Roman pottery to compare with these pieces that were found here some time ago.
That's a piece of 1st century stuff, isn't it? Flavian. You know, these two pieces tell me straight away we've got two totally different dates, haven't we? That's well on into the 2nd century. That's perhaps up to 100 years later. And that flagon. This all screams Roman army to me, doesn't it? This
Yes.
quality of assemblage.
Yeah, I mean we have a few hundred pieces of pottery, and normally if you have a native site, you would have expected 30–40% of handmade wear.
Right.
And there's nothing.
No.
I mean, not a single piece.
What about the stuff you found, Raksha?
Well, I found quite a lot over quite a long date range. There's this.
Oh, yeah.
So same in.
Another 1st century piece, very distinctive. What about that?
We have that.
More of the white flagons.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we do have something here that Erik and I are very excited about.
Well, it's an ordinary plain Samian cup, but it's got writing on it.
Not just that, though.
I think I have a little present for you.
Is it the same one?
Try this one.
It's the same one, isn't it? Yes, it is. Goes together,
There you
doesn't it? Yeah. We've got a whole word there, scratched on there. We've got C-C-E. That's a cursive form of E with 2 vertical strokes. P-T-U-S, acceptus. And if there was an A, it's been rubbed off.
Yeah.
And that must mean the accepted one. So I wonder if that's the name of somebody who lived here.
Must be.
Unless it's just saying it's not a reject. And then there's another AVG, org, underneath. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, beautiful. I mean, this points to military present, I would say.
Yeah, reading and writing. There's always far more of that on a Roman military site. Out here, in these remote provinces, like Britain and on the Rhineland. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
So, we're not giving up at the Zandveld site just yet. But right now, as we reach the end of the day, I have to admit that my attention's focused completely on our Roman boat.
In fact, what you here see is the top of this plank, the upper plank.
That's that one there?
Yeah, that one there.
So what we've got is the full height of the boat in the trench.
Yes.
Normally, when we excavate anything Roman, it comes out of the ground looking pretty ancient and bedraggled. But this is completely different. Look at the angle of this boat. It's like it was moored here yesterday. And the quality of that timber, it could have been cut last spring.
It's fantastically well preserved, isn't it?
It doesn't look ancient at all, does it? It's modern.
No.
And that's just at the end of day one. I can't imagine what this is going to look like tomorrow. Beginning of day 2 here in Utrecht in the Netherlands, which used to be part of the northern frontier of the Roman Empire. And we're looking at 2 sites, a mystery military one over there, and this huge trench here in which there's a Roman boat which is coming out looking, in my eyes, really modern and pristine. Except last night I had a moment of panic. Suppose it is modern and pristine and not Roman at all. Yeah. There are no Roman finds associated with that boat. I haven't seen any Roman graffiti on the sides of it. And dating this stuff must be really difficult. Is it Roman? How do we know?
Dating it now, without general chronology, the constructional features of the ship points toward a typical Roman boat. For instance, the transition from bottom to sides with one L-shaped piece of wood, like half a dugout, for instance. That's typical Rome.
Are there any other kinds of boat apart from Roman ones that have that same kind of build?
No.
Well, that's a relief, isn't it? But I had to ask.
I can't believe how beautiful that is. That is absolutely...
And they took all the bark off the linie, so everything is worked.
Everything, it is, isn't it?
We're digging a Roman river barge, and it's got to be the best preserved structure we've ever seen. It's only a pity that 3/4 of it is buried too deep for us to get at on this dig. This boat's on a steep angle, and one end's some 6 metres below ground, too deep even for geophys to detect with radar. This dig is all about exposing a 5-metre section of the barge that will allow the experts to find out exactly how old it is. Phil, meanwhile, has gone to have a closer look at the other Roman barge found close to ours that's already been fully excavated. It's being stored at the Netherlands Institute for Ships and Underwater Archaeology.
And it's just been raining.
Joining Phil on this trip is British woodworking expert Damian Goodburn.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
This is the bow end.
Up there. Is that the front? That's the front.
That's the main, and in that big block, that's where the mast goes,
Yeah, that's
is
the
it?
mast, yeah. We didn't find it, but there was a mast in there.
I mean,
probably carrying a sail, but also used
for towing,
with ropes.
for pulling the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, the quality of the planking, and I mean the techniques, the woodworking skills, incredible, isn't it?
I mean, you can still see some of the original saw marks where the saw used to cut the planks went up and down and left scratches on the surface here. The axe marks preserved on the side of the frame timbers here. The tool was being used in this direction to trim up the edges of this strengthening timber here.
To me, it's the scale of it. I mean, it's big enough seeing half of it, but when you think about what it's like full size, it's enormous, isn't it?
It's enormous.
What Phil's looking at is half the length of the boat, which has been cut into two for ease of storage. These barges are a bit like a punt, and this one measures 2.5 metres wide by 25 metres long.
Do you know what they would have carried in this? Because presumably you could have got a hell of a cargo in it.
Yeah, we did some calculations, and actually when you would have dumped it full with grain, or for instance something like that, that would have been too heavy and the ship would have sunk. So we think loose goods that you could place throughout the ship.
Where we're digging on our boat is at an end. Let's go up and have a look at that. Oh God, look at the size of these nails.
Yeah, I mean, the preservation's fantastic. You can actually see some of the hammer blows of the smith that made the heads of those nails. I mean,
There are like 40,000 of these in the ship.
40,000? That's amazing. And they go literally all the way along. They're all perfect, amazing. Now, here we are. This is our end of our boat where we're probably digging.
well, you don't know that for sure, Phil. I mean, it may be, but, you know.
Well, that has got to be the crucial question then. If we can find that block where the mast would have been, then we know that we're at the bow end.
Well, it may be a while before we find out which end of the barge we're revealing, because to piece together the story of this boat, every bit of evidence has to be recorded, even the basalt blocks scattered around the trench. Erik, the high-tech boys have moved in.
Yes, it's a drawing arm really. It's a mechanical thing which you can follow the beams and planks, and it sends coordinates to the computer. So it's just mechanical, and you just follow the lines of the beams and planks.
And does it do it three-dimensionally then?
Yes.
So it's essentially for recording?
It's a recording, it's a drawing arm, we call it.
Right. Back in England, we've got a bloke called Steve who does that with a pencil. The story revealed by excavating the other barge, Domain 1, was that it had been sunk accidentally, as it was discovered with all kinds of personal possessions still inside the cabin. The cabin is a unique discovery in itself, and it's been partially reconstructed.
Well, yeah, I mean,
off the boat here.
Yeah, they had to dismantle it on the ship, and this is a reconstruction of what was actually found. And with the dark line here, they've indicated what was found in position, and metalwork and woodwork. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It's unique. No other ship has this sort of cabin.
I mean, it's got all the creature comforts. What amazes me too is they've obviously got something worth pinching, because that is a very efficient
incredible lot. Yeah, I mean,
amazing, isn't it, eh?
that means they could leave the ship overnight or whatever, or at least for a while, and keep the precious things secure inside the cabin.
Well, they obviously did have something worth pinching.
The finds inside the cabin include a stylus for writing and military-style sandals, which have prompted the suggestion that the owner may have been a retired soldier. But most impressive of all were a set of tools that included these wooden planes that even had the shavings still in the blade. The wooden parts are being preserved separately, but despite being just over 1,800 years old, even the metal looks as good as the day it was made.
I don't know, is the original lock isn't better than the reconstruction?
Yeah,
it really is. And there's just such an array of tools. I mean, you've got shears, entrenching tool, boat hook. It's just stuff that you instantly recognise.
I mean, this crowbar here is just about the same as what you could actually buy today.
I know. But
amazing.
Then again, you get things like that. What on earth is that?
Well, if you compare it to this one, you see it's the same kind of handle as this key has. But actually, they reworked it into a chisel, and they worked with it as a chisel because here you see they really hammered on it.
Most of these objects, they look very sort of domestic. They look very peaceable. But then on the top of that, you've got a spear.
Well, actually, if you look at all the wood preserved in the ship, if this was a spear, the wood would have been there, and it wasn't. So it was on board for another reason.
Maybe a knife or something like
Maybe
that?
a knife, whatever, but it wasn't used as a spear, because we didn't find the shaft.
It's certainly got me thinking about what surprises this barge might have in store for us. And with the basalt rocks now being lifted out of the way, the diggers can set about revealing more of the boat itself. It appears our boat was abandoned here on a bend in the river. And one of the reasons it's preserved so well is that it's been covered by the wet river silts laid down as the Rhine gradually shifted over the centuries. Erik, in fact, believes that the Roman army's biggest challenge here on the frontier was battling the natural forces of the river, and that our barge may be part of that story. It's only now that we've got the basalt blocks off that you can see what a dramatic angle the boat's at.
Nobody would position a ship against a revetment with an angle like this in a river bend where the strongest current came.
Yeah.
So all this points in the direction of intentional sinking of the ship.
But Victor's drawing them not sinking it, but pulling it out.
Well, they would have had to fix its position on the bank and...
but with these ropes?
Yes, we draw it on the bank a little and maybe throw in all these basalt blocks.
So are you suggesting that they put it in that position for a particular reason, like being a pier or a quay or something like that?
Well, what we know, we've done a lot of research in the environment, and we know the river was threatening the Roman road in the background around 100 AD. This construction was made in 100 AD. We have dated the poles of the construction.
Yeah.
And its shape suggests that it was meant to protect the road from erosion.
Erik thinks that the boat was used as a barrier to stop the river eroding the bank. The Roman engineers seem to have fought a constant battle with the river as it kept shifting position. But they'd no other choice because they were surrounded by marshland and everything had to be built on this narrow ridge of sandy soil.
So a critical thing, presumably, is going to be whether the date of this in relation to this. Because I can imagine that you wouldn't use a new boat for this, would you?
You wouldn't.
Erik, what's the oldest boat of this kind that has been found so far?
Well, we have one other boat of this type. It was found in Xanten. That's post-dated, 98 AD, which means they didn't measure the, what do you call it, the sapwood.
The sapwood,
the bark, which will give you an exact date. So it's a post...
A bit after 98 then.
Could be 40 years after.
Oh, could be 40 years,
yes.
Right.
So if we do get an early date, this would be the oldest boat of that kind that
could
could
well
ever be
be
found.
Could well be.
Wow, yeah.
But to find out the date means doing something fairly brutal to our boat. Shocking, I know, especially as we haven't revealed the full width of the boat yet. But I'm assured it can all be pieced back together again. Apparently, they need to take quite a few samples in order to get a dendro date, and we'll find out more about that later. Mapping the changing course of the river has been crucial in developing an understanding of the frontier. But as you might imagine, the archaeology is a tad complicated in places. This is especially true at the other site we're digging here at Zandveld. Erik and Herre's excavations found the corner posts of a Roman watchtower built beside the river in the 1st century. But 100 years later the river had shifted, and pottery finds in this area suggested a bigger Roman presence, something like a small fort, may have been built here in the 2nd century. Sadly, the 2 trenches we've dug here haven't found any structural evidence of a fort.
So is that the story of this trench, do you think, that it's mainly medieval features?
I think so.
So we've got nothing sort of Roman in here that we need to take
We've got some
notice
Roman
of, really.
debris, you know, like little sherds or little pieces of roof tiling. But I think we have to declare this trench Roman empty. It's nothing there.
Right.
There's little more we can do here, except to say that if there is a fort on this site, it doesn't occupy a very big area. Henry's been creating a 3D model to analyse the frontier system. Essentially, the forts and watchtowers here weren't just about guarding the frontier, but were carefully positioned to control movement along the River Rhine.
I think the important thing is to realise that it's not only a military corridor. All the forts here depend on their supplies to be brought in from outside.
Right.
And these supplies are coming up from Switzerland and later on from Britain. This is the corridor that takes the trade to Scandinavia and to France.
Right.
So this is the motorway of Europe. Every bit of heavy traffic has to go on this river. So we're basically protecting the motorway of Europe here.
That's it, that's it. Yeah, and here you have the patrol system that goes with it. I mean, look at the chain of watchtowers.
But I don't understand that. When it's such a flat landscape, why can't you just make do with one if you're just trying to watch that area of the river? Why do you need so many?
Because you can't actually see in a river area like that. If you're on the boat, you need to know where the next bend comes and you need to know where you're heading, especially in a system like this where you have several branches at the same time. So they're way markers, but they're also the ones that stop pirates getting through. They need to be higher up to see further ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is they're somewhere between sort of traffic lights or maybe like lighthouses, something like that?
Yeah.
Damian, you don't do suspense, do you?
Well, no, I mean, oh, wait a minute, that's fantastic.
Look at that.
Oh, that is a bit, God, that is a bit nice, isn't it?
Some size, isn't it?
I tell you what, when you see that against the other one that we've just looked at, that has got to be twice the size of
Something
the one
like that, yeah. I mean, you're talking about twice the capacity at least, twice the volume of cargo.
And what amazes me too is the condition of the timbers. The timbers are every bit as good condition as what we've seen today, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the size of them too.
What's your first thoughts?
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, we should be finding these things in England. We're not, so we have to come here to find them.
They'd have had them in England?
Well, I think it's likely. We've got lots of Roman ports. We've done a lot of work in Roman port excavation, especially in London. We've got seagoing ships of the period of Damian 140 AD-ish, and we haven't found the river barges. We've got dugout boats, we've got seagoing ships, and we're missing this link. This is a missing link.
And now, after a hard day's digging, we're beginning to see the details of this boat. Phil's first question, though, is fairly basic. Do we now know which end we're digging?
I think there is 80% chance that we now know what end of the ship it is. For the masthead would be on a quarter of the length of the ship, seen from the
front end.
From the front end.
Yeah.
So does that mean it would be in here?
It would necessarily be in this trench.
If it was the front end.
Yeah. So we can say 80% certain that this end is the stern.
Yes.
The back end of the ship, yeah.
That is amazing.
Disappointingly, there doesn't appear to be a cabin at the back of this barge, but it seems our experts have spotted something that makes this boat rather special.
It's peculiar to see a joining of planks, at least from the bottom planks, with a mortise and tenon joint, which is typical for the Mediterranean.
I was going to say,
so you're saying, hang on a minute, it's in the bottom planking that the joint
in the bottom planking.
Oh my God, that is unusual.
They're not saying more at the moment, but they've promised to explain tomorrow. Tomorrow's also the day when these wood samples will be analysed, and we'll find out if the date of this boat's also special. Right now, it could be the drink that's talking, but the experts seem genuinely excited. Jaap said to me about 5 minutes ago that every archaeologist says that their latest dig is unique, but that this boat really is unique. Cheers, Phil. And hopefully, somewhere under that mud tomorrow, we're going to find out why. Do you want a beer? Come on then. Beginning of day 3 here in the Netherlands, on the old northern frontier of the Roman Empire. And one of the downsides of being here is that we can't show you more of this very beautiful country because guess where Time Team are digging? Right in the middle of a building site. I don't think the archaeologists are even aware we're on a building site. Their eyes are transfixed on the perfectly preserved Roman barge we're digging. And today's the big day when we'll find out most about it. But first, there's still a bit more boat to reveal.
Morning, Phil. How are you getting on?
Oh, absolutely excellent. It really is something else down here.
It's looking very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually now got the full width of it now.
Oh, so this is the other side in front of
Yeah,
it?
and it's the full height of it, so we got the full profile.
Right.
And I mean, since I've been working here, you just really get that sense of being in a boat. It's quite incredible.
I notice you're digging with a different implement, you know. This is not your normal trowel.
But you see, the normal trowel is never far away, is it?
I mean, what's that you're using?
Well, it's a kitchen spatula.
Oh, right,
It's wooden, you see.
This is what, to save damage in the wood, presumably?
That's right. The other favourite tool is your hands. And then, of course, to get it really clean, you sponge it down.
What's this thing behind you that looks like a sort of, well, I don't know, looks like a fence post or something?
Well, we've been calling it the mast, but we ain't really but we ain't serious about that.
Right. Well, it does look rather round and straight.
Yeah, but there's a good archaeological reason why it's not.
Not the mast?
No, well, you
Right.
see, though, we got those big blocks of basalt.
Oh, yeah, these are the things we were fetching out yesterday.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, Jaap was saying he thinks that they actually tumble in from the bank. And they've actually tumbled down across the base of the boat.
Right, yeah.
Well, now you see, there you've got basalt down there, but this pole is actually on top
right.
of the basalt. So if the basalt's got nothing to do with the boat, this certainly hasn't.
So you think perhaps it's a tree stump or something?
Yeah,
like
just
that?
something that has just settled in, and I suppose as the water level's gone, it's settled against the side of the boat.
Yeah. Oh, wow, yes, that's rather good, isn't it?
This is a model of Domeurne 1, the other Roman barge already excavated in this area. Jaap's brought it in to point out some of the differences with our boat.
As you can see, the general constructional elements are the same, but on the other hand, this ship is 2.5 meters wide, and the ship we are excavating now was at least 4 meters 80.
Wow!
Almost twice.
So does that make you think that the boat we're digging was actually longer than this one?
It's longer, but it's not twice as long. I think it's in between 30 or 35 meters long originally, and I think more towards 35 than towards 30.
These barges were the lorries of their day and the only cost-effective way of transporting goods, some 20 times cheaper than going by road. As I understand it, these barges helped to transport all kinds of Roman goods heading through to Britain, but I'm not sure exactly how the supply system worked.
What we have over there, what we've been looking at, is part of the river truck part of that journey, if you like. Utilitarian boats carrying bulk cargoes down the Rhine of all kinds, some of which were things like wine and so on later on that came over to Britain. And you had at least two different types of boat involved in that. The low, flat vessels like we've got out there, and then big, much rounder vessels. And I know Victor's been working on a couple of drawings here.
A 35-metre-long barge like ours would never make it across the North Sea, and the goods would be transferred to a seagoing ship like this. This particular ship, Blackfriars 1, was found in the River Thames in the 1960s. It's possible, in fact, that the goods were transferred from boat to ship here at Utrecht.
The name Utrecht means trajectum, which means the crossing point. People assume sometimes it just means crossing from one side of the river to the other, but it can also mean crossing from the river system into the sea.
And then, do they cross straight over from Utrecht to Britain?
Not quite. It is easier to sail down along the coast into the delta.
This is down here somewhere?
Down here where the big islands are, yes.
It's near the modern ferry ports of places like Vlissingen or Flushing.
And it's basically from there over you get a good sailing straight into the Thames estuary.
Yesterday, Jaap hinted that he'd seen things in this boat that make it a unique discovery. And now he plans to show Phil exactly what he meant by that. He's been busy sticking yellow pins into these planks to indicate where they've been fastened, using a mortise and tenon joint like this, a technique that's never been seen before in any of the Roman boats found here.
So what you're saying then, that these timbers are not merely joined to these, but they're joined
together
through there
yes.
by a piece of timber.
Yeah, really.
And these yellow pegs mark the pegs that actually seal the joint together.
Yeah, that's true, yes.
That explains why you get pairs of them
Yeah.
against the joint.
What is actually the point of using mortise and tenonsing on a boat?
Well, because it makes the otherwise weak bottom, you see how distorted it is here, it's not a very strong construction, and it makes all the planks held together, and so they don't move like that easily, so they're less likely to leak. It makes the bottom stronger and tighter.
So far we have excavated approximately 15 ships from this type. It's the first time we see a mortise and tenon technique to join the planks. Normally the planks are held in place by quite a lot of iron nails through the floors. They probably used local people to make the aisles, the L-shaped pieces of wood, chaps that were normally making dugouts. Those people were not used to have joined planks, and the Romans explained how to join planks.
So you think
together.
this is a very early example of a Rhine barge?
It should be, but maybe we learn more about it by the dendrodating.
So, Damian, in a sort of scale of 1 to 10, where on earth does this boat rate in terms of importance?
Oh, it's 11. It's 11 because it's throwing all the accepted ideas up in the air.
It's that important?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
oh yeah, oh
It
yeah.
really is.
So important, in fact, that we need to take the chainsaw to it again. Apparently, we need more samples to analyse in order to find out precisely how old this barge is. This is done by a process known as dendrodating. In simple terms, this means analysing the tree rings or growth patterns in the wood and matching the patterns with other ancient trees of a known date. Esther Jansma and her team can compare the tree rings here with a database of trees from most of Europe. The problem has been that the sample bits of wood so far haven't contained enough tree rings.
How many do you like?
At least 80 or 100.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you get that from this?
Well,
this
we got it from the Kimstukken. I don't know the English term.
The L shape.
The L shape.
You know?
Oh, the brackets. Sort
Yeah,
of. Right.
Actually,
Yeah. Right.
One of the L-shaped pieces and
Right.
bottom plank were very long. But if you look,
Crikey, yeah. How many years of that then?
this one is 208 rings, and this one contained 189. But when you look at the pattern, you can see all these periodic dips in the growth in this tree.
Even though these samples had over 100 tree rings, they haven't yet been able to find a match with the database, which is why they need more samples. The appliance of science is in evidence out here too. What are you doing with your little pump?
We're trying to get some groundwater up.
Why?
Because we want to analyze the water and see if the environment below us, where the ship is good enough to preserve the ship.
What are they planning to do with the boat at the moment?
Well, it's going to be filled up again after the excavation, and it will be protected as an archaeological monument.
So what will be on top of it?
Well, on this specific place there will be a bicycle path.
But you'll be able to tell them whether or not they can do that without the boat degrading.
Yes, that's it.
One of the bonuses of cutting sections out of the boat is that we can now see one of the mortise and tenon joints. For the past hour, various groups of archaeologists have been squatting round this little square of wood like it's the Holy Grail. Phil, why is everyone getting so excited about this?
Because it is just such a revolutionary way in this part of the world of joining planks together.
It's a mixing of two different technologies. We've got the very Mediterranean feature of these little tongues of wood, these tenons, which are used to join the bottom planking, which this is one of, edge to edge, to fasten them together to make one huge sheet of plywood, if you like. I mean, we have boats built very, very similar way to this on the Thames in the 16th century, and they too managed to make the bottom planking fairly thin by strengthening it with these free tenons.
But that's 1,400 years later.
Yeah, this may be the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of that technology.
But the main goal of the dig was to find out the date of this boat, and now that moment has finally arrived. According to Erik and Herre, this barge should date well before 100 AD if their theories about this frontier are to be proved right. To get the most precise date, the sample has to include the sapwood from just under the bark, as this contains the last growth rings in the tree that show exactly when it was cut down. This sample didn't have the sapwood, but it has given us an approximate date, which Esther's working on right now.
I can't wait to know.
All right, I'm showing you here. The last ring of the L-shaped piece dates in 52 AD, the last ring.
52 AD.
AD.
Right.
Add 25 rings, you come to 77 AD, plus minus 6 or something, and that's your post date.
So
77.
So we're looking at something in the early 80s. Well, I thought there'd be some reaction, Erik. Why is that so exciting?
No, I mean, it's just about, I mean, I said 85.
Yes, you
didn't
did.
I?
Yes, I had 55, so I'm way out.
I said 71. I said 71.
Is this exactly the time that you wanted?
Yes, I mean, if you asked me this morning, I mean, the only thing I could think of, when was the first serious phase of construction on this land infrastructure?
Yeah.
To my opinion, it began around 85 AD. That's after 7 years of research. So, that was my guess.
So as well as all this infrastructure going in, they're getting the shipping sorted out to bring the
bulk
supplies.
carriers were constructed. So that was my guess.
I think they're quite happy with this date, Esther. Yeah.
It's always good about Esther. Always brings the good news.
It's a great finish to the dig and their project in this area.
Oh, now you can really see its boat shape, isn't it?
But given the importance of this barge, I have to ask them, is there any chance the rest of the boat will ever be excavated?
If the groundwater level lowers and we notice that, there's degeneration of the wood, I think we call time team.
You think there's the possibility that one day we might get the phone call?
You might.
Come and dig the whole boat.
I think, we have to reschedule time team and do it in 4 days, I think.
We might just do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Wouldn't it be great if we could just pull this entire barge out of the ground right now? Well, with the magic of graphics, we can do just that. This way, we can see the full scale of this unique river barge, which measured just under 5 metres wide and something like 35 metres long. This is the missing link, as Damian calls it, the earliest example of a Rhine river barge. It was constructed most likely for the Roman army, using a mix of local and Mediterranean shipbuilding techniques. Built around 85 AD, this barge seems to have had a working life of 15 years before it was deliberately sunk around 100 AD to stop the River Rhine eroding the frontier road, a desperate measure by the Roman engineers fighting a constant battle against the forces of nature. And now there's just enough time to share the news with the people who did all the hard work. Ladies and gentlemen, the dendro date for our barge is, give or take 5 years, 85 AD, which makes it the earliest Roman barge ever discovered on the northern frontier.